Hey guys, this is Carl and this is AMBA 600 MBA Fundamentals Stat 689 Excel Statistics Tutoring Forum. In this video, I want to go over just kind of preparing and summarizing data. Just give you a broad overview. This is a little bit different than another video dealing with kind of descriptive statistics. Here, you're more kind of preparing the data. And what I mean by that is like if you need to add additional variables or just need to just kind of deep down dig and kind of tweak it so that you can make a more informed, more accurate analysis of whatever data you're working with. So, just a quick sense, an overview of this video particularly is we're going to go over if statements, we're going to go over the VLOOKUP function, relative and absolute cells, COUNTIF function, and pivot tables. So, as I said and mentioned before, it's very Excel-based, and we're just going to kind of touch on some key functions with respect to your homeworks and just how it can be applied and what actually it means. I mean, it's one thing to understand and conduct the function of COUNTIF, but it's quite different to understand what exactly that means and how is that different from, say, the if statement. So we'll dive into that. And so, the best way is just to kind of open up and start our Excel. So we have this data set. This is kind of a small data set by some standards, but it's actually fairly large. It's about 8,400 records. There's a row ID and order ID. This is kind of a sales data set. So just for example's sake, so we're going to start with an if statement just to show you what it is. So in Excel, the if statement allows us to kind of create a variable based on the condition of another variable, or as it's referred to as a logic test. So what I want to do real quick is just give you a sense. So if, say, we'll pick on order priority. So we'll start with this cell, and you'll see how it references. If that equals, say, low, but a key point with the if statement, it's one thing to do a number, but as you notice, this is all text. And so when we're dealing with text in the if statement, we want to do parentheses. But with numbers or numeric data, you don't need to. So it's a key point when dealing with text versus numbers, alpha or numeric. So we're going to say low, exact case. And then if D2 equals low, then we're just going to say 1. And if it doesn't, then we'll just say 0. We'll do it that way. And as you can see, it equals low. Now, it's a little offset because of this table, but if you drag it down, the formula will be applied to the corresponding rows. So this was D2, so the next one is D3. And the next one after that is D4. So you're kind of seeing how it's just capturing this down. So ideally, this would be lined up with that so that you can create a variable that identifies a certain condition from another variable. So that's a real key point with the if statement. Now, with respect to the COUNTIF statement, so I'm going to go with that one just to kind of have a quicker comparison. Now, COUNTIF has a couple other things that you could do with it. So COUNTIF is summarizing it. So whereas the if statement allows you to create a variable for further analysis, COUNTIF allows you to provides a broader analysis. So say for column D, we're just going to go broad on this. So count the number of ranges that are low. Count the number of times low pops up. And so what we'll do is going to count this entire row to see how many show up as low. So 1720. So out of the 8,400 records, it's down here, count 8,400. 1720 are low priority. And what does that mean? Well, we'll just get a quick calculation. That's how you do it in Excel. Equals your numerator and denominator. So 20.24. So it's about 20%, but just to make sure you know how to, you go to Format Cells. And after it loads the format cells, you'll be able to actually change this into a percentage. So you'll see percentage, you can change however decimal places you want. Usually standard is about maybe 2 or 3 to the right of the decimal point. We'll stick with 1 for now. 20.5%. So in essence, 20.5% of the order priority of the orders are low priority. So that's the COUNTIF and the if statement, kind of a quick comparison of that. Now, I wanted to show you one thing about the relative and absolute cells. So with relative or absolute cells, A relative cell is just that the cell value changes as you scroll down. So what I'm going to do is say E2, actually we're going to stick here. Order quantity this time. E2, cell E2 minus 5 is equals 1. 6 minus 5 equals 1. So as I mentioned with the if statement, as you drag it down, it applies that. So this is E2, so subsequently it would be E3, E4, and it's up here you can notice E5 minus 5, E6 minus 5, that kind of thing. So these are relative cells, E2, E3. So as you scroll down and apply the formula to other cells, Excel makes that adjustment. Now an absolute cell is one that you want to fix. You don't want that cell to change. So for instance, just curiosity's sake, you want to highlight this cell, and it's the F4 function. So you hit F4, and you notice there are $signs to it. One for each cell. One to the left, one to the left. And so I just wanted to show you real quick what that means. So now that this is an absolute cell in that context, if you drag it down, it'll just apply the same items. So, and also in the context of, real quickly, just to give you a sense of what happens when you scroll. So if you do this again, we're just going to go L2 minus 5, minus 8, we'll get creative a little bit. And you just apply it further down. Now, for instance, say we wanted to just do 1. So if you have it here, it keeps it the same. So if you notice, when you scroll down, it locks in the column. Because if you go here, what does it do? See, it locks in that column and you go across. That's what happens when you just have one $sign to the left of the actual letter of the cell. So you can go across. Now, conversely, if this was only to the left of the number and not the letter, you'll notice the same applies in this way. It freezes that number completely. And if you go to this, what does it do? It changed the letter of the cell changes, but not the number. So depending on where you want this sign, it locks in that value. And obviously, as I mentioned before, if you have a $sign for both, it locks in that cell exclusively. So if you do it for that one, just like here, this will not change regardless of going down, regardless of scrolling across, and applying the formula elsewhere. That value, it will always reference that cell. So a key point to make. Looking at the VLOOKUP is another option to look at your data. It's a little bit of a complex one, so I wanted to say that one for looking. So the VLOOKUP, this lookup value is what you want to look up, essentially. So say if I want to look up the value of 55. Now the table is one I would highlight here. So I know this is my table. And I know already in advance that this reaches 8,400 records. So it's my 8,400. And so my column index number. So with the VLOOKUP, it's kind of unique that this value has to be in the first column of what you're looking at. So if you highlighted, say, if I just highlighted starting here all the way to ship mode, this value would have to show up. I'd be looking for this value in this column. It's the row that's to the farthest left of the data set that you selected. And the column index number is where you're looking for the corresponding value. So what it is say, and key point, you know how these are lettered, this looks at them as numbers. So because I have this entire table right here, this is column 1, column 2, column 3, for the purposes of this value right here. So you can kind of see, I mean, if your data set is large enough, there's other means to search. But in dealing with our scope of data sets and kind of understanding of how big it gets, we're just going to go here. So I want column 3, 1, 2, 3, this one. So after doing that, and this one is optional, so just for the sake, we're just going to close it and start, and 41, 11, 3. So you get your corresponding value right there. So that's the lookup function in essence. So with the value of 55 in part 1, you can kind of see how that was going. So that's the VLOOK function in itself. So now lastly is pivot tables. Now with pivot tables, with respect, it's very good and detailed piece that we look at. So dealing with the pivot tables, it's a way to synthesize your data and collapse it a little bit. Preparing, it's usually traditionally used to create maybe a subset data set. If you're only wanting, say if you have 30 or 40 or 50 variables, you want to just pinpoint maybe 4 or 5 variables with a couple of crosstabs. It's used for summarizing data sets. And it's one of the easier ways to summarize very large data sets instead of creating if statements or creating kind of variables and counts and stuff like that. So the pivot table is in the insert function. It's right here. Pivot table. You just insert pivot table. And so one of the first things it will ask you is to highlight your data set. So again, we're going to go here. I know in advance we have about 8,400 records here. That's our pivot table data set. And existing worksheet, we'll go for it. It's going to put it right there. See, this is our pivot table. These are the values based on this. So I'm going to add, we're going to add sales as a value. That's the total sales of, that's the total sum of sales. And I want to know order priority. And I want to know maybe the ship mode out of curiosity. And you can see how what I've done based on this is based on, regardless of priority, the sales from deliveries, the sales from express, sales from regular air, and grand total. Now say I want to know the sales with high priority. Do we have more high priority business or not? So going to there, you can kind of see versus high priority how it is parsed out by the delivery method. So again, the pivot table allows you to do a quick synthesis of the data. So we just hope this helps, and just let us know if you have any questions along the way. All right, thanks so much. Bye.